Hello, I'm Barbara Levin, the Executive Director of Neurofibromatosis Mid-Atlantic. We released our first podcast in February 2016, and at that time, we touched on the issue of suicide. Recently, one of our constituents called our office and referenced his suicidal ideations. And to be honest, this is not the first time we've encountered this issue. It has, in fact, been cited often when we've allowed a forum for people to express themselves. At NF Mid-Atlantic, we have a responsibility to help people who have NF and those who love and care for those people as they try to be honest about the issues that confront them as they traverse their lives. We know that people are more than their disorder, and they can face the happinesses and sadnesses that parallel the emotions of the unaffected. To that end, I am so happy to introduce Dr. Alissa Putman, who is on the local board of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and in real life, she's the director of the Faculty, Staff, and Student Assistance Program at Johns Hopkins. The AFSP has been so helpful to us at NF Mid-Atlantic. Welcome, Dr. Putman.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, we certainly appreciate your help. Briefly, I thought you and I could ask you about some of the most common myths that I hear about suicide. One of the myths I hear, thank you, is that people who attempt suicide are mentally ill. Is that true?
That we do hear a lot of. We do know that about 90% of folks that attempt and or die by suicide are suffering from undiagnosed or untreated depression. And so depression does correlate to suicide attempts. And that's why if someone is noticing any kinds of symptoms of depression or concerning symptoms, it's so important to talk with that person and to get them connected to help.
Oh, thank you. We hear this. People who talk about suicide are just trying to get attention.
I've heard that too, and I hate that myth. It concerns me so much that people think that, there are many ways to get attention. So if somebody is talking about suicide, it absolutely needs to be taken seriously, even if they say that they're joking, even if they laugh it off. They've brought it up. It's a cry for help, and we always take it seriously and want to talk with that person and find out what's going on for them. If they are talking about it, it means that they do experience some sort of emotional pain and they are wanting some help.
Yes. Well, another myth I've heard, once people decide to die by suicide, there's nothing you can do to stop them.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for bringing that up, because that is something that at AFSP we are trying to dispel. It is so important that people are aware that there are some things that you can do to try and prevent suicide. That's such an integral part of if somebody is talking about suicide or showing some signs that are concerning, having that conversation with somebody, getting them connected to help is so important and can absolutely dissuade them from thinking in that way. We know that folks who are thinking about suicide feel hopeless, they feel helpless, and they feel like that is the only avenue for their pain to go away. By being a supportive and listening ear, that helps to ease one's pain, and by getting them connected to the proper treatment can absolutely help.
Yes, and we'll discuss that soon about how one gets those help. But let me go over just a couple more myths that I've heard, because they've been expressed by a lot of people. You should never ask people who have attempted suicide if they are still suicidal.
Mm-hmm. I have heard that too, that the myth is that if you it up, you might cause somebody to that way. And we know that folks actually feel relieved if somebody asks them that question. They want to talk about it with somebody and often feel ashamed to bring it up. And so if you bring it up to somebody that you care about, 9 times out of 10, they will feel relieved and will open up to you.
Well, that's interesting because I faced that reaction just telling people that I was going to have this conversation with you. So I I know. So I certainly understand it, and I think it has taken 8 years for us to have this conversation, which is sad. Another one: when people who are suicidal feel better, they are no longer suicidal. Is that true?
Thank you for bringing that up. I think that somebody that is suffering from depression, it will ebb and flow with treatment. So if somebody is engaged in treatment and supportive, there are times where they might not feel suicidal, but that doesn't mean that they won't ever feel suicidal again. Again, depression is an illness, and we know that it's correlated with suicidal thoughts and suicidal attempts. Just because somebody appears like they're happy, appears like everything's going well, if that person has mentioned it in the past, it's always a good idea to check in with them, make sure they're doing okay, because we certainly know that how somebody appears on the outside is not always how they feel inside. And so it is important to have that conversation and not assume that person will never feel that way again.
Very good to know. A final thing, and I think some of these things come up because people are doing a checklist. I'm not suicidal because I live in this area or I'm a certain age. And one of the things that I've heard is that children don't commit suicide and that only older people commit suicide. What do you think?
Well, we know that's not true by looking at the statistics, unfortunately, and we've seen more and more on the news, sort of tweens and teenagers dying by suicide. It breaks my heart to hear that. We say that, suicide doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter the age, the class, the race, the socioeconomic status, the job. It touches and affects everybody in some ways. We do know that females are more likely to make an attempt than males. However, males are more likely to die by suicide than females because they use more lethal means. And the highest risk right now that we've seen from statistics are males. However, that does not mean that children and teenagers are not at risk for suicide.
I missed a little that last part. The highest risk is for who?
Right now, the highest statistic is for white males of middle age.
Oh, interesting. That is interesting. Well, all right. Well, what should we do if we care for someone or know of someone who is considering suicide?
Thank you for asking that. You absolutely want to express your concern, talk to them, check up on them frequently, and help get them connected to some sort of help, whether that's a local mental health professional or a support group in your area. It could be sort of a trusted loved one. It could be your local priest, rabbi, clergy, somebody that they feel comfortable talking to. If they are experiencing depression, it is really important to get the proper treatment for that, and by going to see a mental health professional. AFSP also provides lots of educational information, support groups, and other types of resources. And so I always encourage people to also go to afsp.org, our website, and it's a good place to start to see if there's a local chapter and other resources close by. Lastly, I would just say if somebody has expressed suicide, it's important, not to leave that person alone, to make sure that there are no lethal means in the house, that the person does have access, and again, to offer to check up on them, have them stay with you, and take them to an appointment if they're nervous about speaking with a therapist for the first time.
That is wonderful. We will put all those resources on this video on our website. It is, I have to confess, it's a little scary even for me asking these questions. But it's necessary.
Barbara, can I add one more thing?
Of course.
I'm sorry I want to make sure that National Suicide Prevention Hotline is stated, and that people have that. Whenever we do presentations, we actually ask people to pull out their cell phones right there and put it in that moment, so that everybody has it. So everybody watching this, please pull out your cell phones and put in this phone number so that you have it available to you. And so the number is 1-800-273-TALK, TALK, or 8255. So that's 1-800-273-8255, and that's the National Suicide Prevention Hotline.
Well, that's wonderful. Dr.